They called me worthless, treated me like dirt, laughed at me when I had nothing. But today, I walk through the gates of their mansion, not as a maid, but as the billionaire who owns everything they once had. They don't recognize me at first, but when they do, their faces drain of color. And that's when I say the words I've waited years to say. Remember me. I remember the day I first stepped into the Thompson estate, like it was yesterday. I was only 14, small for my age, with a thin frame and hands rough from years of scrubbing floors in the orphanage. But I wasn't prepared for what awaited me beyond those iron gates. The mansion loomed before me, a towering structure of marble and glass, stretching toward the sky like a monument to wealth. Its walls gleamed under the afternoon sun, and the windows were so polished that they reflected the world like mirrors. I had never seen anything so grand, so enormous. For a brief moment, a foolish thought crept into my mind. Maybe this was my fresh start. Maybe here, I would finally belong. I was wrong. From the moment I stepped inside, I understood my place. "She's scrawnier than I expected," Mrs. Thompson had said, her cold eyes scanning me from head to toe as if I were nothing more than a stray dog. She was a woman of elegance, dressed in pearls and silk, but there was no kindness in her face, only judgment. Mr. Thompson barely looked up from his newspaper. "She's an orphan. She should be grateful we're giving her a roof over her head." Grateful. That word would haunt me for years to come. The mansion was more than just a home. It was a palace. Golden chandeliers hung from the ceilings, casting warm glows over velvet carpets and intricate paintings. The grand staircase wound up like something out of a fairy tale, leading to endless hallways of luxury. But I wasn't there to enjoy any of it. I was there to serve. Mrs. Thompson wasted no time assigning me tasks. My first job was scrubbing the floor of the grand foyer, a space so large it felt like I was cleaning an entire town square. My knees ached against the cold marble, and my hands turned raw from the soap. Victoria, their daughter, was only a few years older than me, but she carried herself like a queen. Her golden hair cascaded in perfect curls, her designer dresses flowing with every step. She didn't look at me like I was a person. I was just another piece of furniture to her. Something to use, something to mock. "You missed a spot," she said one afternoon, pointing to a tiny speck of dust on the floor. I wiped it away. She smirked. "No, I meant the whole floor. Do it again." I clenched my teeth but obeyed. I always obeyed. Nights were the hardest. While the Thompsons dined on gourmet meals, I ate scraps in the tiny storage room they had turned into my bedroom. A thin mattress on the floor, a single blanket, and a small lamp were all I had. But the worst part wasn't the hunger or the exhaustion. It was the way they made me feel, like I was nothing. Years passed and nothing changed. I became invisible, a shadow that moved silently through the mansion, cleaning, serving, enduring. Until the night everything changed. It was a stormy evening, the rain lashing against the windows, the wind howling through the trees. I had just finished setting the dining table when Mrs. Thompson called me over. "You forgot the wine," she said, her voice sharp. I hurried to the kitchen, grabbed the bottle, and poured it carefully into her crystal glass. My hands were steady. I had done this 1,000 times. But Victoria, sitting beside her mother, had other plans. She accidentally nudged my elbow, and the glass tipped over, spilling deep red wine across the white tablecloth. Silence filled the room. Then came the slap. Mrs. Thompson's hand struck my face, so fast I barely had time to react. My cheek burned and my eyes welled with tears, but I didn't let them fall. "You stupid, clumsy girl," she snapped. "Clean it up." I stood there, my heart pounding. I could feel their eyes on me. Mr. Thompson's indifference, Victoria's amusement, Mrs. Thompson's rage. And something inside me broke. I wasn't a child anymore. I wasn't the helpless orphan they had taken in. I was a young woman with dreams, with a future beyond these walls. I dropped the cloth on the table and met Mrs. Thompson's gaze. "No," I whispered. The room went still. "What did you just say?" she hissed. I swallowed hard, my hands trembling. I said no. For the first time in my life, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. "You ungrateful little." I took a step back. "I'm not staying here," I said. My voice was quiet, but it carried more power than any scream ever could. "One day I'll come back. And when I do, you will remember this moment." Victoria laughed. "Oh please, where would you even go? You're nothing, Anna. Nothing." I ignored her and turned on my heel. With nothing but the clothes on my back, I walked out of the Thompson estate. The rain poured down, drenching me within seconds, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I had no money, no plan, no idea what the future held. But I had something stronger than all of that. A promise. One day I would return. And when I did, I wouldn't be the maid. I would be something far greater. The rain felt like tiny needles against my skin as I walked away from the Thompson estate, my clothes drenched, my shoes sinking into the muddy ground. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I didn't know where I was going. I had no plan, no money, and no one waiting for me. But I knew one thing for sure. I was never going back. Thunder rumbled above me, and the cold wind bit through my thin dress. My teeth chattered, but I kept walking. With every step, I replayed their laughter in my head. Mrs. Thompson's scolding, Mr. Thompson's indifference, Victoria's cruel smirk. "Where would you even go? You're nothing, Anna. Nothing." Her words stung, but they didn't break me. If anything, they fueled the fire inside me. I gritted my teeth and whispered under my breath, "I'll show you." I walked for hours, my legs aching, my feet blistering. The city lights were far ahead, flickering through the darkness like distant stars. I had never been on my own before, never had to survive without someone telling me what to do, what to clean, what to obey. But I was free, and freedom, no matter how terrifying, was better than living in a golden cage. By the time I reached the city, my stomach was twisting with hunger. The streets were alive even at night. Cars honking, people rushing past, bright neon signs flashing in the rain. I had never seen so many people in one place, never felt so small in such a big world. I wandered through the streets, hoping to find shelter. My dress was soaked, clinging to my shivering body, and I could feel the stares of strangers as I passed. I spotted a small diner with warm yellow lights, and the smell of food drifting through the open door. My stomach growled. A waitress, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, noticed me lingering by the entrance. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, her voice kind but cautious. "You lost." I hesitated. I didn't want to beg. I had spent my whole life being treated like nothing, and I refused to lower myself to that. I need work," I said finally. "Anything. I can clean tables, wash dishes, just something." She studied me for a moment, then sighed. "Come in before you freeze to death." I stepped inside, warmth wrapping around me like a long-lost friend. The woman's name was Carol. She ran the diner with her husband, Joe. And they didn't ask too many questions about why a teenage girl was alone in the middle of the night. They gave me a towel to dry off, a plate of warm food, and a job. It wasn't glamorous. I scrubbed floors, washed dishes, and wiped down tables. Work that wasn't much different from what I did at the Thompson estate. But here, no one sneered at me. No one threw wine in my face or called me worthless. For the first time in my life, I felt human. Carol paid me in cash at the end of each night. Not much, but enough to rent a tiny room in a rundown motel. The mattress was thin, the walls stained, and the pipes rattled whenever the wind blew. But it was mine. I would sit on that mattress every night, staring at the ceiling, my mind filled with nothing but the promise I had made to myself. One day I'll come back. And when I do, you will remember this moment. Weeks passed, then months. I worked every shift I could, saving every penny. I bought secondhand clothes, a notebook, and a pen. Every spare moment, I wrote down everything I observed. How Joe handled the cash register, how Carol managed the inventory, how customers reacted to service. I watched. I learned. And then late at night, when I was alone in my motel room, I taught myself. I found an old library and spent hours reading books about business, finance, and entrepreneurship. I scribbled down notes, repeating words I barely understood until they became familiar. I wasn't just surviving. I was preparing. The work was exhausting. There were nights I collapsed into bed too tired to even eat. There were mornings when I questioned if I had made a mistake, if I should have just stayed in the Thompson estate, accepted my fate, and obeyed. But then I would look at my reflection in the cracked motel mirror. at the bruises on my hands from scrubbing dishes, at the tired but determined girl staring back at me. And I knew I had made the right choice. One night, as I sat on my bed flipping through a business magazine I had borrowed from the library, an article caught my eye. How this young entrepreneur built an empire from nothing. I read every word, my heart pounding. The story was about a woman who had started with nothing. Just like me, she had worked tirelessly, built a company from the ground up, and now owned $1 million business. I ran my fingers over the glossy page, imagining my own name in the headlines someday. And that's when I knew. I wasn't just going to survive, I was going to win. 6 months after I left the Thompsons, I had saved enough to move out of the motel and rent a small apartment. It wasn't much, just a single room with a tiny kitchenette, but it was a step forward. I started taking night classes in business management. I used every spare moment to learn, to absorb, to prepare. And then, after a year of working at the diner, I made my first bold move. With the money I had saved, I bought a set of cleaning supplies and printed flyers, offering housekeeping services to local businesses. I knocked on doors, walked into offices, and introduced myself to anyone who would listen. Some slammed the door in my face. Others laughed. But a few said yes. And that was all I needed. The first job led to another, then another. And before I knew it, I wasn't just a former maid working odd jobs. I was a businesswoman. I was building something real. The moment I had been waiting for had finally arrived. I sat in the back of my black luxury car, watching as the gates of the Thompson estate creaked open. The same gates I used to walk through as a powerless maid. The same gates that once made me feel trapped. But today, I was coming back not as a servant, but as the new owner. I stepped out of the car, my heels clicking against the stone driveway. My reflection shone in the glossy windows of the mansion. No longer the frail, scared girl they once mistreated. I was dressed in a tailored designer suit, my hair styled to perfection, my presence commanding. I saw the real estate agent waiting for me on the porch, fidgeting nervously. And then the door opened. There they were. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. Victoria. Their eyes widened as they took me in, shock flashing across their faces. Anna. Mrs. Thompson gasped, as if she were seeing a ghost. I smiled. It's been a long time, hasn't it? It didn't take long to figure out that things had gone terribly wrong for them. The once pristine mansion was no longer as grand as I remembered. The garden was unkempt, the fountain was dry, and inside, the furniture looked worn. Mr. Thompson, once a proud and arrogant man, now had deep lines of stress on his face. Mrs. Thompson's expensive pearls were gone, replaced by a simple blouse that lacked its former elegance. And Victoria, my cruel tormentor, stood frozen, gripping the back of a chair, her once manicured nails now chipped. "You're buying the estate?" Mr. Thompson finally asked, disbelief in his voice. I nodded, taking slow steps into the living room. "Yes, it's a beautiful property, but I understand it's been sitting on the market for a while. That must be frustrating." Mrs. Thompson forced a tight smile. "We've had financial difficulties. The economy hasn't been kind to us." I tilted my head. "Oh, I thought only poor people had financial difficulties. Isn't that what you used to say?" Victoria flinched. Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably. "Anna Miss Hayes," I corrected sharply, referring to my new legal last name. Anna Hayes. The realization hit them like a slap. I had shed the identity of the helpless orphan they once controlled. I was someone entirely different now. Someone powerful. Mrs. Thompson let out a nervous laugh. "I must admit, this is quite a surprise. I never imagined you'd become so successful." I smiled, but there was no warmth behind it. "No, you didn't. You thought I'd always be a maid. A nobody." Victoria crossed her arms, trying to regain her usual smugness. "So what? You made some money, and now you think you're better than us." I turned to her slowly. "No, Victoria. I don't think I'm better. I know I am." Her face turned red. "You bullied me for years," I continued. "Treated me like dirt. Laughed at me when I had nothing. But look at you now." I gestured around, desperate to sell the house because you can't afford it anymore. Victoria's hands clenched into fists. "You don't have to buy it," she snapped. "We'll find another buyer." I chuckled. Will you? Because from what I hear, nobody wants it at the price you're asking. Mr. Thompson sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. Let's just discuss the sale. I took my seat at the grand dining table, the same table where I once served them meals. They sat across from me, their faces tight with resentment and forced politeness. The real estate agent nervously cleared his throat. Miss Hayes has offered the full asking price in cash. Victoria's mouth dropped open. You're seriously paying cash? I smiled. I could buy it 10 times over and still have more than you ever dreamed of. Their silence was my victory. As the papers were laid out for me to sign, I took a long, slow look around. The mansion had once been my prison. Now it was mine. I picked up the pen but hesitated. Actually, I said thoughtfully, I have a new idea. Mr. Thompson tensed. What do you mean? I set the pen down and folded my hands on the table. I don't want the house anymore. Mrs. Thompson frowned. But you just said. I was going to buy it, I interrupted. But I've decided I don't need it. You see, this house meant something to me once. It reminded me of pain, suffering, and humiliation. I leaned forward. But now, it means nothing. Just like all of you. Victoria's face twisted in fury. You came all this way just to rub it in our faces? I smiled sweetly. Exactly. I stood, smoothing my suit. Enjoy your crumbling little empire while you still can. Because no one is coming to save you. With that, I turned on my heel and walked toward the door. I could hear Mrs. Thompson calling after me. Could feel Victoria's furious glare burning into my back. But I didn't care. Because the greatest revenge wasn't in taking their home. It was in showing them that I had risen so far above them, that their existence no longer mattered to me. I walked out of the house, leaving my past behind, for good. As I stepped out of the Thompson estate for the last time, I expected to feel triumphant. For years I had dreamed of this moment, seeing them broken, powerless, desperate. I had imagined how satisfying it would be to walk away, leaving them drowning in their downfall. And yet, as I sat in the back of my car, watching the mansion shrink in the distance, something unexpected crept into my heart. It wasn't joy. It wasn't satisfaction. It was emptiness. I had spent years building my success with the idea that one day, I would return and make them regret everything they had done to me. But now that the moment had passed, I realized something unsettling. Revenge had fueled me for so long, but it couldn't sustain me forever. The true meaning of success. As my driver navigated the streets, my mind wandered back to the girl I used to be, the frightened, exhausted orphan who scrubbed floors until her hands bled. I had worked so hard to escape that life, but deep down, I had never really let go of it. Was I truly free? Or had I just been running from my past, trying to prove my worth to people who never mattered in the first place? I glanced at my reflection in the car window. The powerful businesswoman looking back at me was a stranger to the girl who had once begged for kindness. Was this really all I wanted? That night, I sat in my penthouse apartment, staring out at the glittering city below. For the first time in years, I let myself think beyond success, beyond revenge. I had wealth, power, and influence. But what had it all been for? I thought about the people who had helped me along the way, the woman who gave me my first job, the strangers who had shown me kindness when no one else would. I thought about the maids still working in mansions like the one I had left behind, struggling, powerless, unseen. And suddenly I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I made a decision. I started a foundation to support orphan children and young workers in low-income jobs. I built shelters, funded education programs, and provided job training to people who had been told they would never be more than servants. I became the mentor I had once needed. Years passed, and my name became known not just for my business empire, but for the lives I had changed. One day, as I was overseeing a new shelter project, a young woman approached me hesitantly. "Miss Hayes?" she asked, clutching a notebook to her chest. "Yes," I smiled. I just wanted to thank you," she said shyly. "Because of your program, I got into college. I'm studying business now. You've given me hope for a future I never thought I could have." My heart swelled. At that moment, I knew I had finally found what I had been searching for. Not revenge, not wealth, but purpose. The Thompsons were nothing more than a chapter in my past, And I was writing a much greater story,